No, there was absolutely no ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there. People at Area 51 do not have the clearance. I was paid by the Department of Naval Intelligence, and what they're doing, researching extraterrestrial craft, is beyond me, but that's where my checks came from, so I can only assume that they were in charge of that. At one time, the Russians were involved, and supposedly there was some breakthrough made by our team, however this project was split up. And right after that happened, the Russians were no longer permitted on the facility at all. And you know, that's all I know about it. What was discovered, why they were kicked out, when they started working with us, is all unknown to me. I was put into the briefing room with 121 or 22 briefings, and really was just told to sit and read through them. I think they were there just to mainly educate me on what was going on. They weren't a complete in-depth explanation on everything else, but just essentially a brief synopsis on some of the other projects that were going on there. Supposedly, the information, now this isn't something that I determined, it's something I was told, that the crafts originated from a planet that orbited the Zeta Reticuli star system. Zeta Reticuli 1 and Zeta Reticuli 2 are two stars of a binary star system. The craft allegedly came from there. One or two autopsy photographs I saw dealt with just a small photograph, a bust shot essentially, just head, shoulders, and chest of an alien with a chest was cut open in a T fashion and one single organ was removed. The organ itself in the other picture was cut and vivisectioned essentially. Showing the different chambers in there. This was totally unrelated to anything I was doing, but from that photograph it looked like what you see in UFO lore as the typical gray. So how tall it was from what I could see, I couldn't tell because I only saw a portion of the photograph, but if everything else you see is correct, I would imagine it was 3.5 or 4 feet tall. But there again, all I had to see was a photograph, and I didn't have much to go on. Allegedly, this interaction has occurred since man was a simian creature, and there were genetic alterations made.
How specifically did the briefings detail how the aliens manipulated our genetics over the centuries?
It mentioned 65 or 63 corrections or additions to the genetic makeup that finally resulted in.
So, Gary, maybe you can tell me what it is that the U.S. government is really sort of on about in regard to you, and your perspective on it.
The main thing that concerns me, I've made full and frank admissions all the way down to police interviews that yes, I did obtain unauthorized access to these systems, but they're piling on these ridiculous damage claims. And I've since found out that for it to be worth a year in prison in America for an extradition case, it has to be worth at least $5,000 damage because it comes under cybercrime. So as if by magic, lo and behold, every machine I was on, I'm accused of causing exactly $5,000 worth of damage to. So it's patently untrue. And in my opinion, and the opinion of others more well-informed than me, the pressure they're bringing to bear has more to do with where I've been and what I may have seen. If you could confirm the existence of extraterrestrials and their contact with us, then that would be good. But to me, it was more important to have this free energy system.
Okay.
And having been all over other NASA installations already, I assumed the blank password scanning method would work the same in Johnson Space Center, and it did. Once I was in there, I used various network commands to strip out the machines that were in Building 8, and got onto those. And the very first one I was on literally had what she said. I can't remember if it was filtered and raw, processed and unprocessed, but there was definitely folders whereby there was a transformation in the data taking place between one and the other. These folders were full of images in a proprietary NASA format, or in a format I'd never seen before, no JPEGs or GIFs.
Huh.
They're also 200 to 300 megabytes in size, and being on a 56k dial-up modem, there's no way I was going to download it. It's like 5 minutes per megabyte. So what I did, the remote control program that gives you graphical control of the machine, turned the resolution right down, turned it down to I think 4-bit color. And then on the desktop of the NAS machine, navigated to the folder, double-clicked on the first image. The application launches, the image comes up on the screen, but it's still very, very slow. And what I saw, I was hoping to see exactly what she was describing, sources and very definite imagery. And what instead I saw was, I assume was the Earth. This was in sort of shades of grey, but you had the Earth's hemisphere, filling about 2/3 of the screen. And then halfway between the top of the hemisphere and the bottom of the picture, there was a classic sort of cigar-shaped object, but with sort of golf ball domes, geodetic domes, above, below, and this side, and I assume the other side as well, so to the left and the right as well, and with very slightly flattened cigar ends. No seams, no rivets, no sort of telemetry or antennae or anything like that, and it just had a feeling of not being man-made. There was none of the sort of signs of manufacturing.
So in essence, it was a craft, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And
when
quite...
I first saw the top half of it, I thought, oh, well, a boring satellite picture or something. But as more of the thing was revealed, it was obvious it wasn't like any satellite I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And I've been space mad since I was about 14, so I've seen lots of pictures of satellites.
Okay. So can you tell me what else you found? Because I know that you have something, has some information in regard to non-terrestrial officers, is that right?
Yeah. There was an Excel spreadsheet, and the title was non-terrestrial officers. Then it had names, ranks. It wasn't a long list, didn't even fill a whole screen, I think.
Well, could you just generally say how many? I mean, if you were to guess, are we talking 20, 50?
20.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 30.
It's the human nature. You can get up every day, you can go to work, you can collect your large paycheck for relatively little work against the public interest, and go to sleep at night after watching your shows. But if you realize that that's the world that you helped create, and it's going to get worse with the next generation and the next generation who extend the capabilities of this sort of architecture of oppression, you realize that you might be willing to accept any risk. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, so long as the public gets to make their own decisions about how that's applied.
Why should people care about surveillance?
Because even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded. And the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude, to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call. And then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
there's more that keep walking by, and one of them has a weapon.
Roger, received, Carter 15.
Okay.
208.
See all those people standing down there?
Stand by. Roger. Stay firm. And open your courtyard.
Yeah, Roger. I just estimated there's about 20 of them. There's one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Correct. Bandage 14, route 336.
I don't know if that's...
Hey, Bushman, Sullivan. Copy at White 6. That's a weapon.
Yeah. Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18.
We'll call for exchange by Charlie Mike Bravo.
Speed 37. Number at White 6, Bushman 26, Romeo. Roger. Fucking break.
Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18. Have individuals with weapons.
4 radio. Rio Bandage 14, route.
Yep, he's got a weapon too. Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18. Have 5 to 6 individuals with AK-47s. Request permission to engage.
Roger that. We have no personnel east of our position, so you are free to engage over.
Alright, we'll be engaging.
Roger, go ahead. I can't get them now because they're behind that building.
Any Bushman, Sullivan, copy
We
at
got
White
an
6.
RPG.
Alright, we got a guy with an RPG.
I'm gonna fire. Okay.
No, hold on, let's come around.
Behind buildings right now from our point of view.
Roger, yeah, we're gonna come around and
Hotel
get them
26
from
has
so we can get
eyes
all
on individual with
in.
RPG. Getting ready to fire. We won't. Yeah, we got a guy shooting. Now he's behind the building. God
Roger,
damn
I'm
it.
taking speed coming around.
Negative. He was right in front of the Brad, about there 1 o'clock. Haven't seen anything since then.
Just fucking, once you get on, just open them up. Yeah, Roger,
I see your element. You got about 4 Humvees out along this
you're clear.
Alright, firing.
line here. When the stage line,
Let me know when you gather.
We're shooting. Light them all up.
202 traffic, 260.
Come on, fire.